So hello everyone, welcome to EduTap. I am Surbhi and this is Perspective 360 Degree, your one-stop solution for current affairs, descriptive writing and answer writing evaluation. First of all, for those of you who are joining me for the first time, let me make you aware about the what we do at Perspective 360 Degree. Basically, this initiative is meant to guide you for regulatory bodies examination, especially the phase 2 of your exam and the phase 2 part which concerns with descriptive writing. If you are taking any other exam which has descriptive writing portion that is related to current affairs, then this initiative is for you. We take the most important topics from current affairs which are relevant from the exam point of view, which can be related to various topics in your syllabus. We take them on Monday, Wednesday and Fridays at 5 p.m. live here, and we discuss them using a question answer approach, that is the descriptive writing approach. After the video has been completely aired and it's the chat section or the comment section will be open for you for the next 48 hours. In those 48 hours, you can practice answer writing on the same question that we are discussing and post your answers in the comment section below. Our team evaluates those answers and provides you with a free feedback which is very comprehensive and is very crucial for improving descriptive writing and making it to the final list. So first of all, I hope the audio and video both are clear to you. Today our topic is going to be global economy, what are the fundamental shifts and things like that. I'll also tell you where this topic is coming from. Okay, and just a reminder that this is going to be the most important topic that you will see out there as of now in current affairs. So kindly stick with me, kindly cover this topic. And just to inform you that this one is a recorded premiere session. It is a recorded video that you're watching. I'm not taking it live with you, but definitely keep posting your doubts and additions in the chat section and continue to interact with other people as well. Whatever doubts you have, like from the entire topic, post them in the comment section after this video is premiered, and I'll be happy to answer all of them. All right, so recently what happened by mid-February itself, if you go to RBI's website in the speeches and media interactions, which is very important for our exam, then you will find that there is a speech by RBI governor, and that speech has been mentioned. The topic of that speech is fundamental shifts in global economy, new complexities, challenges and policy options. So this is the name of the speech, and this has been delivered by RBI Governor Shri Shaktikant Das, where it has been delivered at Siachen, Southeast Asian Central Bank Forum. It was basically a meeting of governors which was held where? It was held in Mumbai itself. So it was this meeting at which this particular speech was delivered, and this speech is available in a PDF format on the website of RBI itself, and it has brought a lot of important points regarding the global economy, complexities, challenges, and a very good way forward, policy options, which the governor himself has given. So this question, this topic for today is important. It will help us make good additions to other parts of our syllabus, and also it can be asked as a separate question in your exam. Apart from that, you have been seeing that reports coming from World Bank, IMF, which have projected various percentages of GDP growth for this year for the global economy. So global economy approaches soft landing, but risks remain. So soft landing means safe kind of landing, and landing from which situation, what was the flight that global economy was taking, this will become clear in a while. World Bank, this one we've covered, global economy set for weakest half decade performance in 30 years. So this was an index or a report released by World Bank, and we covered it separately. This is the Global Economic Prospects Report. This has been covered separately as part of Perspective 360 Degree discussions in December. So kindly go back to the previous reports and check this one also out after watching this video. And looking at the syllabus where this topic holds relevance for RBI Grade B, the topic for the paper 3 General Finance and Management, the first topic is structure and functions of financial institutions, and the second one is recent developments in global financial system and its impact on Indian financial system. So these two are the topics where it is related, but you can definitely relate it with the entire finance syllabus. Similarly for NABARD, for the ESI section, you have a topic called globalization. So for that, this topic holds great relevance. For finance for SEBI Grade A finance syllabus. It is entirely relevant for the whole of the syllabus. We cannot just pinpoint one of the topics where it will hold relevance. So guys, I'm repeating again, there are going to be a lot of important points which have nowhere been discussed. No policy makers have talked about these before. So kindly pay a lot of attention to today's topic. This is not going to be an easy one, but it is definitely going to be very fruitful, and you will see this when you sit for your final exam, that is the phase 2 exam. So now let's look at the expected question, and the expected question has been framed after reading the entire speech. It was a very long speech, and after reading the entire speech we have figured out that there are two important things that the RBI governor has tried to point out. The first one is, what are the paradigm shifts in global economy following the unprecedented pandemic crisis? So fundamental shift or the paradigm shifts in the global economy that have come up after the pandemic or the pandemic crisis, economic, health crisis, trade routes, or the wars that happened after the pandemic. So everything will be touched upon. Then suggest some policy measures for the same. That means the question is also asking you for a way forward. Answer for 600 words, that is for 15 marks. First of all, let me take you to the answer blueprint of EduTap. The answer has to be that any answer that you write for ESI, finance management, and if you're preparing for NABARD, then for ARD, kindly try to write in points. In English descriptive writing, you are supposed to write in paragraphs when it comes to essays, but for these exams where your knowledge is going to be tested, ESI, FM, and ARD, kindly write your answers in points, because the examiner wants to know how much knowledge do you carry and how can you present it. So your answer should be divided into three parts, that is introduction, main body, and conclusion. Introduction should lightly touch upon the topic that is under discussion. For example, our today's topic under discussion is global economy, or the fundamental shifts or the paradigm shifts in global economy after the COVID-19 crisis, after the pandemic crisis. So kindly talk about that in the introduction itself. A little light touching down on that topic should happen in the introduction. Secondly, divide your question into sub questions, into smaller questions, and ascribe a separate part to each of the sub question using subheadings. So for example, the first part of the question is asking us, what are the paradigm shifts in global economy following the unprecedented pandemic crisis? So you don't have to talk about fundamental changes in global economy in the past 1 decade, 2 decades, nothing. After the pandemic crisis, what has changed for the global economy? So this is important. So paradigm shifts will be written in the first part, that will be our first subheading, and the second question is asking us, suggest some policy measures for the same. So in the second part we'll be writing policy measures, and then we'll conclude with a summary or a way forward. Most of the times when you're asked for suggestions or when you are asked for solutions, that is itself your way forward, but you can extend it and add some solutions from your side in the conclusion as well. But make sure that these are not vague solutions. You've not created them in your head, you have read them somewhere, and in such a case, if way forward has been asked as part of the question, for example here the solutions or the policy measures or the way forward has been asked from you, that means that will form the body part 2 of your answer. In that case, a conclusion can contain just a very basic summary. Don't try to mess up with things. Don't try to bring something of your own that you're not confident about. Just write a summary in the conclusion, and that's going to be more than enough. Also, let me highlight that this question is very straightforward. There will be many questions which will have long statements and which will be tough to decipher. The sub questions will be tough to understand, and hence you might not be able to understand how to write the answer, or what should be body part 1, body part 2, body part 3. In that case, I request that kindly refer to Perspective 360 discussions, the previous lectures that we have taken. This is lecture number 73, and guys, it's such a great deal that there's so many competitors who have been with me since day one, and they have continuously written answers for all the 72 lectures that we have discussed. Kindly go back, at least gain that information, at least read other people's answers and download the PDFs of those lectures, because these people who have continued with me since day one, they are going to be your competitors when you sit for exam this year or next year. So kindly refer to those. Now coming back and dividing the answer, how we'll approach according to the blueprint. So in the introduction, we'll give an overview of global economy. In the body part 1, we'll talk about the paradigm shifts in global economy following the pandemic crisis. I've not written it completely. I hope you will understand that what paradigm shifts means here. Then body part 2, we'll be talking about policy measures, and in the conclusion, we are just doing a summary today. We are not playing with any other conclusion. Also, just an addition, this question is for 15 marks. It is not for 10 marks here. That's okay. I will edit this when you submit your PDFs, when you submit your answers. Alright, this question is going to be for 15 marks, guys. Don't be confused. This will be edited later on. So first of all, looking at the introduction. Now, if you have to talk about introduction and talk about paradigm shifts in global economy after the COVID-19 crisis, what are the shifts that you have seen? Also, your world exists in north and south. Southern countries where you talk about poorer countries or developing countries where India is a part. So global south or global north. Global north, it consists of developed countries, and global south consists of developing countries who are dependent on rich countries or developed countries for their growth, and any shock that happens in the world or in the developed world impacts global south exponentially higher, or disproportionately higher than it impacts any part of the world. So if you have to talk about paradigm shifts, if you have to talk about overview of global economy, first of all, highlight what are the growth projections. So I'm sure that you have read growth projections from IMF, from growth projections of World Bank. Even if you remember one of the data, that's more than enough. So talk about what is the projected growth for this year. Talk about how developing world has been coping. Has the developing world coped completely because of the pandemic crisis or not? And then after lightly touching upon these things, just highlight that a lot of global shifts have come upon, and let's understand some of them. So I'll display this to you. The global economy, first of all, we are highlighting the growth projections. The global economy, as projected by International Monetary Fund, is anticipated to grow at 3.1% in 2024 and 3.2% in 2025, reflecting a commendable resilience amidst repeated shocks. So here we are trying to highlight that the growth projections will increase from 24 to 25. This growth was very low in the past few years after the pandemic, and after the pandemic we had the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We had the supply chains disrupted, availability of minerals or oil, availability of food was disrupted for a long period of time, because of which emerging market economies like India, we had to see inflation because of rise in crude oil prices. So since that time, IMF is saying that because of even after repeated global shocks, global economy has shown resilience, and that resilience is very much commendable. So that's the first line. In the second line, we are bringing our attention to emerging market economies, because that's where India lies, and hence it's important to talk about in your answers about India, even when the question is focusing on the entire globe. Alright, so emerging market economies have notably weathered the pandemic and post-pandemic challenges, showcasing improved macroeconomic fundamentals and regulatory practices. So this is what the governor of RBI has said. He said that EMEs have notably weathered, that means the pandemic and post-pandemic challenges. That means they have sustained these challenges, unlike what happened in the 2008 financial crisis. So which indicates that they have improved their macroeconomic fundamentals and regulatory practices. In the regulatory practices, just to give you an addition, the RBI governor also highlighted that how Basel III norms for banking regulation, for banking sector health, they are being strictly followed by emerging market economies, especially India, due to which a financial crisis has not occurred for India, and we have successfully weathered the storm. So now the disruptions, this is a general line that you will have, and this will mostly introduce the body part 1 with the help of the second line that we are trying to write here. So introduction is going to be very short. The disruptions caused by the pandemic, geopolitical tensions. So you start with pandemic, then geopolitical tensions. Here we are talking about Russia-Ukraine war and the Gaza conflict, and inflationary pressures. That means the result of both of these were the inflationary pressures. So we have added 3 problems that were seen post-pandemic, or since the pandemic crisis happened, they have necessitated a re-evaluation of economic models and policies. So this is where you're lightly introducing the second part also, that new models and policies are required, and we'll be talking about them in our answer. So as we explore the factors contributing to this resilience, it becomes crucial to examine the paradigm shifts in the global economy post-pandemic. So what are the paradigm shifts? Let's move on to our Let's Delve Deeper section, where we'll discuss all the entire topic in detail. We'll discuss the body parts, both of these. We'll answer our questions. We'll answer our question completely in detail, and we'll talk about both of these parts, and then we'll finally end with the summary. So your topic clarity is going to get greater here. So guys, I have this question: what do you think are the paradigm shifts after the COVID-19 crisis happened? So the first paradigm shift I see is that how people want to work and how people want to lead their lives. They prefer working from home. They prefer online shopping. So how labor market was operating, that has changed. How we work, that model has changed. Also, there is an upcoming of new technologies. A lot of digitization has happened in all the fields, and thanks to artificial intelligence and machine learning. Chat GPT, a revolutionary technology, has been seen in the previous few years itself. We have seen generative artificial intelligence, creating all kinds of videos, all kinds of pictures. So, paradigm shifts should include digitization. It should also include changes in labor market. It should also include the changes which have come up in the way in which governors of central banks are handling these shifts, how they are tackling inflation, what has changed. And there is a very key component that has changed in looking at inflation also, especially for governors of central banks, that we'll discuss in a while. So there are 5 points that I have for you. The first one is the transformations post-pandemic. What are the transformations post-pandemic? Let me highlight this. So fundamental shifts in labor market dynamics have occurred. What are these shifts? As acceptance of remote work and online activities, that is online shopping, for example. So this has occurred. Secondly, technological innovation and digitalization in every sector has occurred, and this has happened only because of frontier technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. These are being widely used to boost productivity. The second one you have is monetary policy regime shift. What do we understand, or what do we mean by monetary policy regime shift? First of all, who conducts the monetary policy? It's the Reserve Bank of India for our country, and other central banks. So pre-pandemic, or when we talk about before the pandemic, what was monetary policy focusing upon in all the countries of the world? We were seeing deflation. We were seeing in the entire world that growth is not happening. So interest rates were kept low. If you look at monetary policies of 2019, 2018, interest rates were being kept low by most of the central banks of the world, but still, the kind of growth that was expected to change, or after changing or tweaking these interest rates, that was not happening. So during the pandemic, it was decided, and after that, it was decided that to contain inflation or to control inflation, higher rates for the long run, that is also justified. So as you can see, according to the Monetary Policy Committee reports, the recent ones, they have kept the repo rate very high. The interest rates in banks are also very high. That is to control inflation, to take growth into the hands of central banks back. So monetary policy regime shifts, they have occurred from keeping low interest rates and focusing just on the short run, which was happening before the pandemic, to now focusing on the long term growth and keeping the interest rates high if there is a need. So now we are focusing on what happens to India 5 years later, 10 years later. So monetary policy vision has shifted from short term to long term for all the countries in the world. So pre-pandemic, monetary policy operated in a low for long regime to revive growth and counter deflation. Now the problem of deflation is not there with us, sadly, after the pandemic. So the stance shifted suddenly to higher for longer rates post-war in Ukraine, aiming to combat inflationary pressures. So higher interest rates, now the RBI governor has talked about that higher interest rates, okay, they drive growth, whatever is there, but they impact the countries which are in debt, because the cost of that debt that rises. The loan at the interest rate at which you have to give back a loan, that rises. So it's not good. These interest rates are not good for emerging market economies. economies or for developing countries. So higher rates not only burden heavily indebted countries but also impact the balance sheets of banks, because a lot of people cannot return the loans, evident in recent banking sector turmoil. And they're talking about the Swiss bank, not the Swiss bank crisis, the banking crisis that occurred in USA the previous year. So the situation creates a sharp trade-off between price stability, financial stability, constraining monetary policy due to high country indebtedness. The third one is challenges to globalization. So now we have covered on Perspective 360 degree a separate topic on globalization. What do you think are the challenges to globalization? In that topic, when we covered globalization, I specifically asked a question: Is it the end of globalization, or in many answers we have highlighted that globalization might not end, but hyper globalization might not exist. So first of all, you should understand the roots of globalization. India carried out LPG reforms around in like early 1990s. So in during that time, it was promised to India that if you open up your borders, if you carry out LPG reforms, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms, then your economy will grow, economic growth will happen, people will be employed, you will have new products and your products will be there in global markets. So it's a win-win situation for all. But even after so many years of globalization, in 1995, your World Trade Organization started operating. Till 2024, we are still struggling with poverty. We are still struggling, not just India, we are still struggling with poverty in the entire world. We are struggling with inequitable distribution of resources in the entire world. Countries who are rich are getting richer, countries who are poor are getting poorer, climate change has not been taken under control. So everything that we see right now is a result of globalization, and globalization has not delivered the promises of growth that it actually wanted to deliver, or that it actually set a goal to deliver. So it has not delivered those promised goals. So now challenges to globalization are occurring because now countries, they're more independent in producing their own products as compared to few years earlier or few decades earlier. So now countries mostly, they are shifting to free trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, regional organizations. For example, the RCEP is there, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. You have the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So challenges to globalization, they are high because now, because of increase in literacy levels, everybody can see that globalization is skewed in favor of some countries. It's helping the richer people only, and it's not delivering for the entire world. So what are the challenges? First of all, talk about globalization had boosted global economy by enhancing productivity, creating global value chains and free movement of capital and labor across countries. This was very much true, but the benefits of globalization, however, had reached unevenly across countries. And so industrial trade policies worldwide, they're undergoing a shift. For example, in India also, we want make in India. We don't want more and more imported products. Yes, we can use Apple products, we can use products of other countries, but we want them to be created on the soil or on the land of India. So industrial and trade policies, they are undergoing a shift. When we talk about trade policies, we talk about the free trade agreements or the bilateral trade agreements that are happening between nations amongst themselves only, where they can bypass the nitty-gritties that come with globalization. So several economies, they are now reshoring, nearshoring and friendshoring their production processes on security and strategic considerations. So production processes are either based in friendly countries, or they are made in their own countries itself, and this is happening because of security and strategic considerations. Now if you remember that Russia had been an all-weather friend of India, Russia had been supplying defense equipments to India for the longest possible time, but now India is shifting towards France and USA also to buy its defense equipments, and India is also focusing on Make in India for all these defense weapons. That is because Russia is having friendly relations with China, and that is a threat for India as well, because in an unfortunate case of a war, all the weapons that are being supplied to India, probably, what if China has information about all of them? Now, the fourth one is the emerging market vulnerabilities. Here we'll be talking about emerging markets, especially India and other developing economies. So yes, vulnerability has been there for emerging markets, especially as I told you, if you lie in the global south, you are more vulnerable to any global shocks that occur. For example, the banking crisis that occurred in USA last year, that was, absorbed by the economy of USA in just a few days or a few weeks. But if such a crisis unfortunately happens in India, then the shocks will be seen for, let's say, next 10 years or so. And hence, emerging markets, and also when this Russia Ukraine war occurred, supply chains were disrupted. Crude oil was not available in the quantity as it used to be available before, because of the conflict, because of the war. So hence, petrol prices, diesel prices in our country, they went high, and they still continue to remain high because of government policies. But this has to be seen that, first of all, if you are a developing country, if you lie in the global south, then any crisis that occurs in the world is going to impact you disproportionately higher than it impacts the developed world, because these are already rich countries, these are resourceful, these are rich in resources, hence they can provide for their people. But in a country like India, where people struggle for daily means, also from like morning to night, they struggle for those means, and the government also struggles to provide for so many people, their vulnerabilities are high. So what what is the shift that we have seen in emerging markets? First of all, disruptions in trade flows in food, energy and critical industrial inputs due to recurring geopolitical flashpoints and disturbances in key trade routes. So key trade routes, they were disrupted. So what was there? Disruptions in trade flows in food. Our oil prices, they doubled when the Russia Ukraine crisis was occurring. Pulses, when they are not available in India in a particular season, India has to import pulses in such seasons. That trade flow, that got disrupted. Then energy, here we are talking about crude oil and critical industrial inputs. Here we are talking about pharmaceuticals, the raw material. India is known as the pharmacy of the world. We have such a strong pharmaceutical sector which produces generic medicines and other medicines also, which we export to many other countries, and through this pharmaceutical sector we provide for our own people as well. But these medicines or these pharmaceutical industries, they are dependent on raw materials from China. So raw material or the raw medicine, raw drugs have to be made available from China. And it was seen that during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the demand for these medicines was very, very high, because a lot of people were catching fever, cold and other infections because of the COVID-19 virus itself, that time the prices of medicines doubled, because critical industrial inputs, for example the raw material that is required for medicines, those rates, they went high in the global market, and hence import of such products, that became tough due to the pandemic and during the pandemic both. So what happens is raising concerns for food security and macroeconomic management that has occurred. Food security, is it possible for emerging market economies? So that concern has occurred. And volatility in financial markets and capital flows makes these countries remain vulnerable to external shocks, because let's look at your stock market of the country. That depends a lot on foreign institutional investors, that invest here. And emerging market economies are very much volatile to change in the rate of dollar. And because whatever forex reserve you have for safety of your country, the value of that dwindles if the value of dollar changes. And you can just keep dollars with yourself. The road to making your own currency a hard currency. For example, now we are supporting internationalization of rupee, so that rupee also becomes a strong currency, so that vulnerability for Indian rupee or Indian economy is not that high. So yeah, efforts are being made, so that is a big paradigm shift that has come up. But volatility in financial markets and capital flows makes these countries remain vulnerable to external shocks. Then creation of domestic buffers in terms of strategic reserves of critical commodities. For example, strategic reserves of crude oil. So we have strategic reserves of crude oil in 4-5 places in our country, as well as strong umbrella of forex reserves become imperative for emerging market economies. Here you can also add internationalization of local currencies, for example internationalization of rupee. Now here we are not giving any challenge in this part of the answer. What we are highlighting is just the basic paradigm shifts that are occurring. So for emerging market economies, this has been seen that vulnerability is high. One. Second, vulnerability because of trade flows, food, energy and critical industrial inputs, that is high. Third, their only solution for these countries is to have forex reserves and to have strategic reserves of critical commodities. All right, and the fourth one you can talk about is the internationalization of local currency. No matter how slow it is, but that has to begin. Now the fifth one is shift in macroeconomic models. Now what are macroeconomic models? So previously, when inflation was dealt in, inflation is part of macroeconomy. So when inflation was tackled, and you know, inflation actually drives growth in your country. So when inflation was tackled, it was tackled in a way that demand was looked at. If demand is high, then you know, monetary policy should be like this, repo rate should be like this. If demand has to be reduced, then repo rate should be this and that. So only the demand side was looked at. But after the COVID-19 crisis, during that crisis and after the crisis, the you know, geopolitical tensions that occurred, inflation was rising not because of rise in demand. When you know, demand rises for a particular product and the supply is the same, inflation usually goes high because people are wanting to pay a higher price for the same amount of goods. Also, they say that we want these goods, so we can pay a higher price for that. That pushes the inflation high. But it was seen after the pandemic, during the pandemic also, that inflation was reaching high because of supply side factors. So supply side factors were not something that was focused a lot on. Supply side factors, they remained mostly constant for a very long period of time. So a very big shift in macroeconomic model has occurred, that if you have to control inflation in your country, you also need to look at supply side factors, and you just don't have to look at it, you have to solve them for the long run, because such situations can keep arising with time, because people or countries, they are not up for globalization now. Peace in the world is reducing. We see a lot of conflicts, a lot of wars happening. So peace is going down. Trade routes are getting disrupted. Hence, supply chain factors or supply side factors have to be worked upon hand in hand by the government, which usually does not control inflation. It instructs RBI to control inflation or directs RBI. Now the government has to come into picture to control those supply side factors, and secondly, the central banks also have to do their part in controlling the demand side factors and the supply side factors accordingly. So now shift in macroeconomic model from inflation being a responsibility of RBI or central bank itself. Now inflation has become a collective responsibility, or inflation management has become a collective responsibility of the government and the central banks. So overlapping supply shocks, they led to persistent inflationary pressures even when aggregate demand was not unreasonably high. So demand was not high, demand was the same, but supply side factors, they were disrupted. The number of products or the amount of commodities that you had was lesser. So previously, macroeconomic models used by central banks mainly focused on demand side of economy. The pandemic followed by the war, this is the Russia-Ukraine war, and the resultant supply chain disruptions that occurred, again that caused lower crude oil availability. They have brought a sharp focus on the supply side, and for oil seeds also, government of India has been signing contracts with countries which are suppliers of oil seeds. So because edible oil, India imports a considerable amount of edible oil from other countries, and your inflation CPI that does get impacted by the prices of food and fuel a lot. It just shoots to the sky when prices of food and fuel are very high. So the role of governments in managing the supply side or cost push pressures of on inflation has increasingly gained wider acceptance, and a better understanding of supply side of the economy, it has become very important for conducting monetary policy more effectively. So these are, guys, easy things. I've given a lot of content on the screen so that you understand the entire picture, what the governor has tried to put out, and kindly summarize these points. This can be summarized in like 2 to 3 lines, and that's your way to go way forward. All right. Now moving on to the body part 2 and suggesting some policy measures for the same. All the shifts that have occurred in the global economy, all these 5 shifts. So what are the policy measures for these 5 fundamental shifts that have occurred in the global economy? So for 5 fundamental shifts, we have 5 solutions. And if I talk about 5 solutions, you will see that we talked about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay, and change in labor market dynamics. So here we are talking about technology safeguards, that yes, artificial intelligence, machine learning is good. A lot of help because of digitization is occurring, but safeguards need to be provided. All right. And we also talked about that people are more shifting towards remote work. That means more digitization is happening. Remote work is possible when you have access to digital technologies. More online work they're focusing on, or more online shopping they're focusing on. So digital public infrastructure that has to be developed. All right. So you will see a solution for everything. Global cooperation has been kept as the first solution, to check out on these trade route disruptions in food and fuel, whatever disruptions are occurring. If there is a lack of crude oil in the international market because Russia is on a war with Ukraine, then how global cooperation can help countries like India sail through such times. So global cooperation has been suggested by RBI governor. Climate change cooperation has been suggested because otherwise, for the global south, where India is holds a major share, or a major or a big country of the global south, India is, we are most vulnerable to climate change because agriculture is, agriculture forms a major part of contribution to our economy, contribution to our employment, contribution to our food security. And agriculture depends on monsoon depends on what climate is there, and if climate change happens, then India's food basket, it suffers, and India's economy suffers a lot. And being the biggest population of the world, how are we supposed to feed an ever increasing population? So climate change is very much vital, not for just the UN talks that occur, but for survival in countries like India. Then infrastructure development has been focused upon, that whatever loopholes have been seen during the pandemic, after the pandemic, kindly create infrastructure, and not just hard infrastructure but soft infrastructure like healthcare. That was seen, that healthcare has loopholes in the entire world, not just in countries like India but in developed countries also. They cannot cater to the demands of an ever increasing population, or to the healthcare demands of people in the case of a pandemic. Things like education, how online education can be provided, how creatively it can be provided. So that kind of infrastructure investment has also been focused upon. And these are all the points from RBI governor's speech. So let's look at all of them one by one. So global cooperation, so need for effective global cooperation and coordination has been stressed upon. Multilateralism must be energized. If globalization is going down, then at least multilateralism can come up. India can be a part of various free trade agreements. India can be a part of various regional agreements, and similarly for other countries also. Because, okay, let's say you don't have trust on the developed world because these countries, they're challenging your subsidies at WTO, as we have seen in the previous lectures. But you can have trust on your neighboring countries and some far neighbors for some trade agreements, so that some amount of globalization is occurring, some amount of exchange of people, ideas, labor is there. Then agreements on critical minerals corridor and food corridor for safeguarding food security, they are necessary. So whatever happens, critical minerals like crude oil and food, food on the other hand, these supplies should not be disrupted no matter whatever happens in the global economy. Excuse me for that. And such arrangements, they have to be fair and equitable so that they benefit the poor and the rich countries alike. Now climate change cooperation has been focused, as no country can devise strategies on its own to fight climate change, because it's a global phenomena. It's interlinked to all parts of the world, to all countries of the world. Also, smooth and orderly green transition is necessary. For example, if I talk about India, there are two cases. India is a developing country, and as part of our Paris climate deal and as part of Paris climate deal and various other climate commitments that we have made, first of all, investments from the developed world are required in the form of green climate fund. First of all, money has to be coming from the developed world, especially for the countries which are highly impacted by climate change, especially the island nations and countries like India. Secondly, sorry, this is I think I'll be good to go after that. Secondly, you need to enhance transition to a green form of energy production. For example, your power generation has to move from thermal power plants to hydroelectricity and solar based power plants. Now this transition, let's say even if you are using electric vehicles now or hybrid vehicles now, that means old vehicles, they have to be scrapped. If you are moving from thermal based power plants to nuclear power plants or to solar based power plants, not even nuclear power plants, they are contentious, but let's say you're generating electricity with the help of solar based power plants, then that transition also requires money that has to be coming from the developed world. And secondly, countries like India, they don't have to be forced for this green transition, because it takes a lot of money to establish any kind of power plant. And right now the trade deals that we have, the thermal power plants infrastructure that we have, that is also running on loans, and we have trade deals for supply of raw materials. And if we, let's say, we wake up the next day and we shift to our entire electricity production to solar power plants, then it is going to be very expensive for countries like India, very expensive for the power plants that we have already established, because they are still under a lot of debt, and to repay those that debt, they need to be operable for a longer period of time, as is as compared to what is anticipated. So first of all, smooth and orderly green transition is necessary to avoid disruptions to economic activity and loss of growth potential. You cannot welcome a new less polluting technology just the next morning when it is invented. It takes time. You have to look at the economic parameters also. You have to look how many people are employed in that industry which is using non-renewable sources of energy to produce electricity or to drive vehicles. So you have to look at how many people are employed, how it contributes to your economy, is it making profits, and how much time do we require to phase it off. So financial flows to green projects are highly skewed. First of all, the money that is coming for green projects, that is highly skewed, that is coming from the developed world, that is also very small in amount, and they're concentrated in advanced economies. That's what it says. And hence we need to enhance green capital flows to emerging market economies. That means climate change investments, they have to be increased by developed world, they have to be given to the developing world, because the climate change that we see right now, that is a result of all the activities carried out in the developed world in the past, when they had their own industrial revolutions, when they were themselves transitioning to a developed country, the waste that they have generated over time, the pollution that they have generated over time. So it is their responsibility to to provide for countries like India and other small island nations which are impacted by these results of climate change. So mindfulness with respect to potential financial stability implications of green transition. For example, Supreme Court cannot order, or the central government cannot order, that from 2025 onwards everybody should be driving a vehicle that is based on green fuel, or that is based on green hydrogen or CNG only, and petrol and diesel vehicles will not be allowed in the country. Because what is the reason? A lot of us, we own vehicles which run on petrol and diesel, and to own a vehicle in a country like India, it is not affordable for everybody. People depend on EMIs. People, if they invest on one of the vehicle, they keep it for, let's say, 5-10 years, and sometimes even more than that, because it's not easy, or it's not economically viable for families to buy these vehicles every other year. So all the transition that is happening, yes, we are moving to electric vehicles. So the first bridge that has been brought in is the hybrid vehicles, that these vehicles, they operate on electricity also and on your petrol or diesel also. So yes, shift has to happen, but it has to be keeping in mind the financial stability of the country. That means financial stability of families and the people. So financial stability implications of green transition, they need to be considered, they need to be kept in mind, and only such policy choices have to be made. The third one is the infrastructure investment, and infrastructure means investment in hard infrastructure, like roads have to be improved, ports, airports, electricity and water, everything has to be improved, because now we are moving into resources are in crunch, especially in a country like India where population is so high. So resource crunch is definitely there, and hence investment in hard infrastructure is very much necessary. Availability of electricity, water, and for trade we need roads, ports, airports, etc. So that inflation also can be kept in control when your products are reaching to various places on time. So Sagarmala project, Bharatmala project, all these can be quoted there. So equal emphasis is also required on creating soft infrastructure. For example, education, health, legal, financial, institutional. Legal to provide justice, health, because we've seen during the COVID-19 crisis how health gets impacted, how our health infrastructure is not capable to deal with a crisis like that. And education, how education can be disrupted if people are not able to attend school. So all these systems, they have to be made digitally available. Also for that you need to provide hard infrastructure as well. Then skill enhancement and increasing female labor force participation, they are key to enhancing effective labor supply and potential growth. This has been highlighted by RBI governor. The fourth one is digital public infrastructure. This has been focused upon. India has developed India Stack, Jan Dhan Aadhaar, mobile trinity is there. You have unified payment interface. So all this has been appreciated by RBI governor, and he also stressed upon that when it comes to emerging market economies, digital public infrastructure, it can be utilized for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through cost reductions. For example, when you use UPI or when you use e-rupee, if you have access to it, then cash flow is less in the market. Cash flow is less, and hence it also reduces the cost for central bank to print money, and to the soiling rate of notes is lesser as compared to what it was earlier, because only cash flow was there in the market. So digital public infrastructure, it can become a critical part of global public good, and when scaled up beyond national boundaries. So here RBI governor has focused upon the recent availability or interlinkage of India's UPI with many other neighboring countries. For example, Mauritius is there. So, and the fast payment systems of a few other countries drives home the potential of UPI to become an international model for cross-border payments. So now this enhances the stability of rupee as well. It leads to internationalization of rupee, plus a technology which has been developed on ground in India, the UPI. It is interoperable. It is also available in other countries also. You must have referred to lectures of Kritika ma'am for February. She referred to how how like now 5 to 15 countries have operable facilities for UPI, for Unified Payment Interface. So this has been focused upon as very beneficial for by RBI governor also. The fifth one here is very simple, that is technology safeguards, that is artificial intelligence and machine learning. They can bring about significant improvements and efficiency, that goes without saying, but necessary safeguards also need to be provided to prevent the misuse of technology, and vigilance about the possible misuse of artificial intelligence and machine learning. They have to be improved. As we have seen last year also, a lot of frauds were occurring, that faces of many actresses, they were morphed, or faces of these actresses were used in like someone else's bodies, and these actresses were shown to be saying something which they never said, or being somewhere where they never were. So all these technology safeguards, they need to be enhanced, because now we've entered an era of entirely new technologies, a new technological revolution. So new kind of safeguards and very strict safeguards also need to be taking place. Now we'll move on to the conclusion, that is the summary. We don't have a lot to write, so what we'll be writing about is a brief summary, or what has to be done or what can be done. So global economy, it stands at crossroads. As I told you that we are entering a new era. We have already entered that new era, especially after the pandemic. So how people look at life, that has changed. How people operate, how people want to work, that has changed. How you I'm sure that how you were operating before the pandemic has fundamentally changed. Especially I'm sure that digitization or digital education has become a part of your routine as compared to what it was before. So challenges remain in plenty, but new opportunities are also knocking at the door. So that's a very diplomatic and a very balanced statement to write in the conclusion, and we are summarizing here. We need policies that are attuned to the new realities of the global economy, and collaboration is not an option but a necessity now, whether it's about climate change, whether it's about globalization, whether it's about fighting against the problems caused by new technologies. And cooperation among countries should give due consideration to principles of competitive advantage. That means just like it happened with globalization, that poor countries became poorer, that should not happen. And resource endowment, so that everyone benefits. So that's your answer for the day. I'm displaying the question again, just repeating, this question is for 15 marks, and kindly Post your answers in the comment section for free evaluation in the next 48 hours only, that is by Friday 5 p.m. only then your answers will be evaluated. And guys, this is a free initiative, you can take benefit of this as much as you want. Download the PDF of this lecture from our Telegram channel by tomorrow morning. The link to our Telegram channel is given in the description. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done it yet. It is high time, and I would urge you to refer to other live videos or recorded videos that are being posted on our channel every day. There are so many other educators who are helping you out in various parts of your examination, and many students, many toppers, they come to us, they say that they could clear the exam that they cleared just with the help of following EduTap's YouTube channel. So kindly subscribe, kindly like this video, and I'll be happy to take the feedback. This discussion has been very intense today. I'll be happy to listen to how you feel about Perspective 360 degree in the comment section. So let us know your feedback, and these are the ways that you can approach us. You can contact us for any other courses you want to be a part of, any kind of guidance that you require, and you can also book a strategy call with us at this number and this email ID. Both of these are available in the description also. So kindly post your answers as soon as possible, and I'll see you very, very soon on Friday. Unlike these two videos which were recorded on Friday, it will be a live session. So I'll see you there. Take care and all the very best.